Hello and welcome to Flippin' Through the Internet's #1 Mad Magazine news, review, and interview channel. Today, I'm going to be trying to do something a little bit different. I'm going to try to be educational. Geez, before I get started, I forgot to say this originally. Please hit like, subscribe, share this video out. If you can, go to the facebook.com/group/flippinthrough and like that page. I'm going to be posting videos on there, and you can also interact with me on that. Share it out. I think it'll help this channel grow a little bit, and I would sure appreciate that a whole heck of a lot. Thanks. There's a tool that artists use that I've been pointing out in a lot of my videos whenever I come across it. Artists like George Woodbridge or like Jack Davis, but really all illustrators from, back in like the 50s and 60s, if they were working in black and white, would use this material or this resource. I'm not really sure how to describe it really. Anyway, it is something called Craftint, and that was its original name when it was first released. And I learned about this because a gentleman at my local comic shop, where I go every single Wednesday. You should too. You should support your local comic shop. He was showing some coworkers some things that he had been working on, and they reminded me a lot of Mad Magazine style artwork. And so I asked him what he does with them. He's like, I don't know. They just sit on a thing. I said, well, let me buy one off of you. And he recently brought this in to me. Now, this is an example of Craftint. I'm going to refer to it mostly as Craftint, although that is it's an outdated term. Craftint was started in 1929. All right, so quite a long time ago. And Craftint released this paper for artists to use, and they had two versions of it. There was, this paper, which I can zoom in on. It would have unprinted sort of passive lines, or and as I zoom in, you're going to see some of these details. You see that this shaded background, there are these beautiful lines that normally would be, maybe it would be a full wash. Things like this might be rendered with cross-hatching. But this allowed artists to get a more finished effect without having to render their entire illustration. And so Craftint released single tone, and this is an example of single tone because there are the lines going only one direction. And they also released double tone, which is twice as good. It has lines going perpendicular to one another. So it you can imagine lines going perpendicular to this. It was, and I'm using the past tense purposely, a really incredible invention because it was something that made artists work a lot faster. And artists back in the day, they would have like very short turnaround times. They would be doing multiple projects, and so being able to have a high quality piece of artwork, but to be able to do it more quickly was beneficial. So we have the single tone and double tone. Now I'm going to show you, I found a pretty cool example of how these things work. Now, the name on this is graphics, and the reason for that is that Craftint sold their patents or whatever. I don't know. The company was sold off. The single tone and double tone was sold to Graphics, and Graphics continued to produce this paper and the developer until 2009. They just rebranded it to Duo Shade. And so that's how a lot of artists know it, is as Duo Shade. Now here, this is an example right here of Duo Shade. You can see those perpendicular lines. And you can kind of see in this, like you could on the one I have in front of me, you can see the two types of lines. Now this is the most fascinating part, is when it gets painted on, you can watch it as it develops. Now this is an old video clip. It was on Vine, but you can see how it develops almost instantly. And you can have this sort of like organic brush stroke, which looks very nice, but some very precision hatch marks. Now, if we scroll down, this is on the same paper, the single tone at work. Whoop. So as you watch it, it's a different activator, and it activates only one set of those lines. Now, so I'm going to zoom in on mine again to show those lines, because this one, you can sort of see them. You can see them pretty well, actually. Those are the lines, and there are the lines activated. And you can see that the serum, or whatever it is that actually develops those lines, it darkens the space around it, too. So you get more than just the darkened lines. So why isn't this used anymore? Well, it kind of is, but there were a few things that made it unideal to use. One of them is the fact that the paper itself was made with something called mercury chloride. And as you can imagine, the two main ingredients of mercury chloride are mercury and chlorine. Mercury, famously, is not healthy for you, and chlorine is a pretty corrosive substance. So, I cannot imagine that the factories making this were pleasant places to be in, but also you have artists handling this over and over again. And, there's a idea in science or whatever that the dose makes the poison. And, if I handled this paper, assuming this is a vintage paper, and assuming it does have mercury chloride on it, I'm not afraid of it, right? Handling it one time isn't going to be that dangerous. But if I'm an artist and I'm working with this stuff every day, all day long, you can imagine that it's probably not all that healthy. But that wasn't the only part of the unhealth, and that is the activator. The activator was made with something called lead sulfate. And lead, also quite famously, is not good for you. And this is like, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but artists sometimes will like lick their brushes, get a fine point on it. So I just imagine, the artist dipping this into lead sulfate, painting on, maybe giving it a lick, bringing them together, dipping it again and painting on some more. That's probably a worst case scenario, but you can imagine that, again, handling lead, not just once in a while, but multiple times a day, every single day, that's going to have an effect in the long run. The other reason why this went out of style is because of digital, not just Photoshop, but predecessors to that. You could have something that, the digital process was faster than this. If you screwed something up, you don't have to rip it, you can erase it, and you can have this type of pattern imitated with a Photoshop filter or Procreate filter, whatever it is that you use to do your digital artwork. You can imitate this very, very easily. Now, one thing to keep in mind is the difference between something like duotone or duo shade or single tone or single shade and zipatone or screen tone. Those are something non-chemical. That was an overlay that you would put onto your artwork, you would kind of rub it on and cut away the parts that you don't need. So you don't get that same type of organic, brushy stroke or detail if you're using screen tone. But you do get that same consistent pattern. Now I'm going to set this aside because I wanted to bring out a few examples in Mad Magazine. Um, and I have some examples of duo shade, duotone, Craftint. I'm just going to call it Craftint to make it easier. I have examples of that as well as non-examples, examples of the what do you call it, screen tone, and just artifacts from the printing process. So the first one, wait, is this the first one? Number 78. All right, I just grabbed one from pretty randomly. I didn't dig around because it was used very, very commonly. And so if I'm going to zoom in on this. So this is, I don't know, Art Marty. I don't know. I think it's, I don't know what it is. This isn't a flipping through episode. This is a Wednesday episode, so it doesn't matter. But this is artist Mort Drucker. And so you can see on this, we have, what's his face? He has this beautiful jacket. You can tell it's like a, black jacket or like a dark gray jacket. But you have the deep, dark shadows that are done with pen and ink. And then you have these lighter parts. I mean, they're not so light that it's like a highlight. It's reflecting, white off of it. But, oh, geez. Can we zoom? All right, hopefully you guys can make these out all right. But you can see that it's a nice, consistent pattern of these diagonal lines. And you can see it also here on the bar stool. On the bar stool, you have that sort of highlight where he left it off and then painted it on. You can see that the brush strokes right in there where he filled it in. Now, this is great because you can see he rendered this whole, twill coat that this other guy is wearing, and he did these very nice, diagonal lines all throughout the entire thing. Whereas this gives a nice effect of it being solid but a lighter tone. Next up, so that was in 1963. All of this, obviously, at this point, it had already been around for decades. So here I have Mad number 154, October 1972. And I have some beautiful Jack Davis art. And so what's really cool about this is he used it really, really well, in my opinion. But, I mean, Jack Davis sort of did everything really, really well. But he chose wisely when to use the Craftint. So if you look at this illustration, we have, John Wayne laying here in the dirt, and he used some right there, some of that Craftint to do a light shading. But really, this is all rendered out, right? You have almost everything hand rendered, all of those wonderful little lines, and that hand shading right there. But these guys in the background aren't as rendered. Because they're in the background. This is the main focal point of the piece of artwork. And then these guys, you're able to get really nice shading very quickly, and it looks very nice without having to over-render the entire drawing like you do with this guy. Now, we'll see again, in this one, he chooses to use no Craftint whatsoever. And he certainly could have. I mean, he could have filled in lots of these shadings with Craftint. But this is like a much larger panel, and there's, so, it's this awesome, this is practically like what I would want in a splash page on a comic book. Right? You want all of those details. You don't want the little cheats. And so he has everybody beautifully rendered and filled in, and it just looks wonderful. Then you see right down here the next panel, and those guys in the background, again, simple line drawings. relative to Jack Davis's other stuff, and then shade it in with the duotone. Now, I think there was one. The other thing that you might come across is something that kind of sort of looks like duotone or craft tone. For example, this page right here, there is a lot of shading that might seem like it's craft tint, but it's not. Part of the printing process with grays, like if there's a wash or something, it's going to come out with little tiny dots. That's just part of the printing process. Well, the printing process of that time. You can see back here the difference between like the skin color on this character, the dress or her hair, is that these are all very consistent, whereas this background you can see some of the brush strokes. So this was filled in with craft tint, and these were not. My camera is not. I can't zoom in enough to really to prove to you my point. But it's that difference between an artifact of the printing process and an artifact of the artistic process. You see it a lot in the 4-color printing process with comic books at the time, and how they used the series of dots overlapping each other to create different colors. It's the CMYK, right? CMYK, I think. But those dots, as part of the printing process, were not something that the artist put in. It's just a byproduct of the printing process. Here I have another example. Again, Jack Davis. And you see, I picked this one out because I believe this one has... Where was it? I did a lot. Oh, here we go. Yeah, here you can see the use of single tone and double tone together. And so, again, I'll zoom out just a tad. You can see where the focus is on the drawing, right? They're obviously talking to him, but your attention is drawn to these two characters. And so this character is all shaded in. He's not in the light. So we zoom in, and you can see that I would need a better camera. But you can see the single lines going one direction. And then with these darker spots, it's going both directions. And you again get that very nice brushy look with these. And here we have on, I don't know, is that Barbara Streisand? Probably. You can see with her, again, these kind of the brushy lines that are on this. So I wanted to talk about this because in this one, the East Side Story, there is an example of the use of screen tone and some pretty good uses of the duo shade. So here we have on the back of his Khrushchev's head some of the single tone shading, but they later on use some screen tone. And you can see, because the screen tone really pops out in a different way. Here we go. So the screen tone is right here, and you can see the perfectly aligned dots. And then for the pencil and pens and inks are done, and then the screen tone is applied on top of that. And I mean, to me, it's quite noticeable just because these come out really perfect, more perfect than when you're using the brush to activate that paper. So that is another non-example of the whatchamacallit. Now in this one, again, like Mort Drucker also used some of this stuff a fair amount. Again, I want to point out this one as a non-example. Um, you can see Mel Gibson and, I don't know, this lady. Um, it almost, you almost have the illusion of it being lines, but if you think about it, painting an entire page of this specialized paper would probably not be the best use of it. So you would use like a wash on top of this or something like that. I don't know. I don't know how they did that. That's not what this video is about. My research was limited, but go back over to my friend's drawing as to show that example of drawing something that is maybe out of focus or just like very vaguely in the background that you want to fill in. So here's like a Capitol building outside of the window, and it looks lovely. It really shows like, look at this is some seedy government agent, and you know, there's the Capitol building behind him, and look at how he's turning his back to what that Capitol building stands for. I mean, I think it's just a guy. I don't think that my buddy meant it to mean all that. But I can't help it. I'm just very good at interpreting artwork. But I was just very happy to get this. This is, I love, I've fallen in love with Craftint, Duotone, and Duoshade. And so to have an example of it like this in original artwork, even though for him this was something like a throwaway, it means a lot, and I feel very grateful to have it. I would promote him, but he's not a professional artist. He's just you know, at least the way he talks about himself is he, you know. But as you can see, he is I feel incredibly talented. But anyway, support your local comic shop, and maybe you'll get a free drawing out of it. With that, thank you so much for watching. I am putting all of the links to this in the description of this video where I found all of this information, and you can read more about this if you would like. Thank you so much for watching, and toodaloo.